I would describe Birmingham as America's best kept secret.
Birmingham is evolving a well-deserved reputation as a place with a powerful sense of who it is and where it's been and where it's going.
I believe in this notion in Birmingham that there are actually more solutions than there are problems.
This city continues to evolve itself and transform. It's exciting to be here during a time like this.
Birmingham is a blueberry and tomato soup, and we are a progressive city. We are open-minded.
The tagline in the city is, "How can I help you?"
Birmingham was called for many years the Magic City because we had grown so fast from the date of its founding. And then when manufacturing went away, the magic kind of went away.
Birmingham was able to reinvent itself after the collapse of steel and transform itself into a banking hub, an insurance hub, construction hub. And we're at the point where we're starting to become known now as an emerging tech hub.
When you consider all four of those things, technology is going to drive every single one.
Technology is going gangbusters. The business incubator here in Birmingham has gotten national recognition.
They are very welcoming of small business. They champion it.
Birmingham is small enough where you can try something innovative enough to see if it works, but it's big enough to make it scalable and make it applicable to any other city in America.
16 of the top 20 privately owned businesses in Alabama are all headquartered here in Birmingham.
They don't want it to be just them. They want others to prosper as well. It starts with leadership and government, but it truly has come out into the community.
We are blessed to have the mayor that we do. He is progressive, he is tech forward, he is aggressive in pushing forward the things that he thinks will make the city great. One of the big things is continuing to make sure that the people in power represent the people that actually make up Birmingham.
So we're unapologetic about being more diverse and inclusive as an administration and government.
When I first came to Birmingham, I can actually remember the first event that we were invited to. And when I walked in the room and saw so much representation of people that look like me, at this stage of my life, was overwhelmed. What an honor it was to be on the inaugural business council and having access to the mayor, the different departments, being able to give input to those departments. What are the things that would make being an entrepreneur here in the city easier?
When I think about inclusive growth, as an administration, it's not just giving opportunity for women to be in leadership positions. It's not just appointing them to boards and agencies in this community.
When you look at the areas in downtown that are being redeveloped, a lot of intention goes behind that. Are they Black-owned restaurants? Are we making sure we're representative of women? And are we making sure that the things that are going in the city are representative of the people that live here?
Railroad Park was really the first tangible, large-scale manifestation of community spirit and vision. It also transformed the collective psyche. It changed the way that Birmingham looked at itself.
Birmingham did not bulldoze its central business district down. And so we were left with a large inventory of historic buildings. It started, I think, with the preservation of Rickwood Field, which is the oldest baseball park in America, Vulcan, which is the largest iron statue in the world, and it's so symbolic of Birmingham because it symbolizes the iron and steel industry that gave birth to Birmingham. We want the younger generation to be able to live in a town that they can be proud of, and I think historic preservation plays an important part of that. The fact that President Obama designated Birmingham as a national civil rights historic landmark is going to have transformative impact on our city center.
I really do believe that this is sacred ground when you consider events which took place here shocked the conscience of the nation.
The difference between Birmingham and many other cities in the South or the Heartland is that Birmingham reckoned its differences on the world stage.
You talk to people who are knowledgeable about other cities and other countries that have fought their own battles around social justice. Birmingham in many ways was the blueprint.
Having that behind you makes you scrappy as a city.
When you consider the wins that led directly to positive change, I look at that as a badge of honor and that Birmingham was able to fight that fight.
I think that's what, as mayor, I champion every single day.
Birmingham has made some incredible strides in saving its history. I think that's important to get younger entrepreneurs to value the sense of place that a city like Birmingham might. We have a city of 1.1 million people, which I think is near perfect.
You have a great quality of life here. You have affordable housing here.
There is something for everybody without necessarily having to jump on a subway.
It's quite accessible. When you think about where Birmingham is, we're within driving distance to a lot of big places. So you can get to your Nashville, you can get to your Atlanta, you can get to your New Orleans, so you can have that quality of life that you want. But then when you need to get out and go to other places for business or otherwise, you can do that quite easily.
What the coronavirus exposed is everyone does not have to work in the office from 9 to 5. You can actually work remotely now. And so many people want to return back to the heartland. And Birmingham is one of those cities that presents itself as an open city, as a progressive city.
I think that the people in Birmingham are ready to be known for more than the dark blot in history that has made Birmingham what it is today and the potential of what it will be tomorrow.
I think the future is very bright for Birmingham indeed.
Birmingham is doing incredible, remarkable things right now. We're really punching above our weight class.
There is a sense of civic pride currently in Birmingham that I've never witnessed ever before.
The secret sauce of Birmingham.
Easily, the secret sauce in Birmingham is its people.
Passion, vision, and authenticity. It reminds us that we have built something here that is remarkable. Success begets success.
The secret sauce then is we actually have the platform, the place here to be our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Wow, Birmingham is doing great things. Welcome to Heartland Forward's second Secret Sauce series. We heard from Tulsa last time, and I'm excited to learn more about the secret sauce, the ingredients and playbook that makes Birmingham a great place to be and thrive. I'm thrilled today to introduce Cornell Wesley and Deon Gordon. Cornell, with over 14 years of experience managing professional staff in both the public and private sectors, you are a seasoned executive with in-depth expertise that includes oversight of organizational management of technical and policy teams, as well as a proven track record as a skilled negotiator. You have extensive knowledge in regional coordination and planning and are adept at setting and achieving priorities. You have also worked, lived, and implemented major economic strategies in the heartland. This includes states such as Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, and my home state, Oklahoma. And joining Cornell, I'm pleased to introduce another great leader and innovator, Deon Gordon. Deon, you serve as CEO and President of TechBirmingham, the Regional Technology Council for Greater Birmingham. As part of your role, you recently served as Executive Director for TechBirmingham's affiliated 501c3 Tech Alabama, which recently launched their signature coding initiative, Ed Farm, in partnership with Apple. Deon, you have worked on many amazing projects. One of note was helping lead the launch of a restaurant incubator designed to offer accessible proof of concept opportunities for aspiring restaurant leaders. Cornell and Deon, you are both highly regarded partners in many economic development initiatives in Birmingham and across the Heartland. Thank you so much for joining Heartland Forward's Secret Sauce series. We got a taste of some of that secret sauce in the video, but let's get started and hear from you. Cornell, I'm going to start with you if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Cornell, tell us, how would you describe Birmingham, and what's the secret sauce that makes Birmingham thrive?
Well, obviously Birmingham is a southern city, and I say that because it brings with it all of those southern ideals around hospitality, friendliness, and just an enormous amount of collaboration. That's what our city was built on, and so it's become a wonderful place to live, and it historically has been one, but what I'm probably most excited about are foundationally the people. The people have an intentionality around collaboration, as evidence around just this call itself, being able to partner with people like Deon Gordon, pardon me, my brother, and other institutions in our city. And so we're excited about our future. We're excited about our people. We're excited about how we've grown. And finally, the leadership that's here. Not only is our mayor a wonderful leader, but we also have other leadership amongst our utility partners and our nonprofit sector who are just doing amazing work. And so Birmingham is an amazing place to live because it checks all the boxes in terms of quality of place, quality of life, and leadership who's intentional around those efforts.
Deon, I want to hear from you. What is something unique about Birmingham that we may be surprised to learn?
I think a lot of people are shocked when they realize just how young of a city that Birmingham is. It was founded in 1871, and yet it was able to reinvent itself many times over and rise to become one of the major southern cities in the United States. And then when people get here, they're just surprised by, quite honestly, everything. I think people have, at best, an outdated view of Birmingham, and so they are incredibly shocked when they come to town and they see the rolling hills and mountain ridges, when they experience the food. As Cornell mentioned, the people are absolutely remarkable. I love asking newcomers what stood out to them about Birmingham once they got here. They always mention the people. These are individuals that could be anywhere in their careers and in their lives, but there's just something about Birmingham that is compelling, that is magnetic, that is immediately experienced, whether that is just a friendly nod when you're coming out of the airport, or whether somebody going out of their way to help you navigate the city, the infrastructure, whatever the case may be. People are just very surprised by that. I like to think that it is one of the last few places of authentic Southern hospitality where people truly go out of their way to help one another.
Well, you both said it, so it's true. People matter, and you have great people in Birmingham. And we know that inclusive, sustainable growth is fueled by people and projects with a long view of the future. When we got started in this call, it was fun just to kind of catch up with the both of you. And you can tell that you know each other, you work together, and you share that passion of Birmingham. So, Deon, to better illustrate how economic development and change look in Birmingham, can you share specifically around growth of innovation and entrepreneurship and investing in the region? So that is investment in people, right? What we were just talking about. But what are you most excited about in this space and what Birmingham is doing?
That's a tough question to answer, not because the words are few, but really because they are too many. As Cornell mentioned, we have a dynamic mayor in Randall Woodfin, the youngest mayor in Birmingham's modern history, that has led a number of initiatives that were really cutting edge and at the forefront. And whether we're talking about innovation as it relates to investments in people, whether it relates to investments in infrastructure, he's really been championing a lot of things. And I think that is just a reflection of this can-do, swag-back attitude that Birmingham has. If you're talking about investment in people, we can point to initiatives such as the Birmingham Promise, which provides scholarships for kids who graduate out of our Birmingham area high schools. If we're talking about investment in infrastructure, I always point to Railroad Park. It opened in September 2010. And it has already generated an entire neighborhood in a quadrant of downtown that did not exist before. I think when the history books are written, they will point to that moment, the founding of Railroad Park, as one of the pivotal, crucial moments in our history. It really gave us something that we could look forward to as a way to celebrate and showcase who we really were. And so when people come down there, they see what Birmingham looks like. And then you see the construction cranes, you see the economic activity, the theater houses, the restaurants. It is truly symbolic, not just of where we've been because of how the park incorporates the elements of the past, including the railroad, but it's symbolic of where we're going in the future. And so all of those things Birmingham needs, and I think every thriving city needs. You have to invest in infrastructure and green space and parks and things of that nature, but you also have to invest in people.
Yeah, and isn't it great? I think in Heartland communities, it's kind of fun to see those cranes and the construction of really putting dollars at work that are enhancing infrastructure for communities. So I love to kind of hear a little bit about where Birmingham has come from and sort of where you're headed. Cornell, though, I mentioned earlier, you've worked in a lot of Heartland states. And Deon shared a little bit about how Birmingham has changed over the last decade. And I think that, in communities we work in across the Heartland, sometimes people are surprised to hear about change in Heartland communities. And then they're also surprised to hear about the investment in people around entrepreneurship and problem solving. So can you talk a little bit about what makes you excited in those spaces, and tell us a little bit, not just Birmingham, but what you've seen in some of the areas you've worked across the Heartland?
Well, universally, the areas that I've witnessed have always focused on 6 major things. They focus on entrepreneurship. They focus on the municipality, the growth within it. They've ensured that the business and the industry were at the table. They were intentional around having vibrant tools for accessibility of capital and lending. And they also understood how to tell their story with a marketing initiative. And so that pick up and look at any major city or even small community that's thriving, and they are doing those 6 things extremely well. And so I'm excited about, because one thing I can tell you contextually is that I've been away from Birmingham for almost 21 years. While I was born and raised here, I've seen, as you mentioned, all these other places in the heartland and across the country as well. So to come home with a fresh set of eyes and see the growth in my community and see the growth in my hometown is truly exciting. There's been a focus on those 6 things. We have a vibrant entrepreneurial community that's thriving and getting the support it needs. We're spurring innovation through our strategic relationships like Innovation Depot. We are supporting it with lending and access to capital tools through the Birmingham Business Resource Center, as well as the City of Birmingham and its own instruments. And the one thing I will say that we're going to be extremely aggressive about moving forward is telling our story about Birmingham today. We're not stuck in 1963, and I think it's important that the rest of the country knows that we aren't as well. And so we're going to be extremely aggressive in storytelling and narrative building around who Birmingham is. And as Deon has already illuminated in some of his comments, how great we are today and how amazing the people are and aggressive they are about giving you that Southern hospitality.
If economic development directors, community leaders, policymakers, if they don't have that storytelling piece as part of their strategy, they're missing out. I mean, part of Heartland Forward's mission and vision is how do we help change the narrative about the middle of the country and kickstart economic growth? And you have to tell those stories. And again, people are still surprised that, funding is coming into the middle of the country. We have entrepreneurship. We have all these great things. But if we're not telling our own stories, we're not going to continue to get more resources. So I think that's a great point for many of those that are listening to the Secret Sauce series that are your peers in other communities or other policymakers across the Heartland. But none of this, all this great work and sort of where you've come and where you've headed, none of it is easy. So I'd love for you to share, for both of you to share, one, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are those challenges that you're still like, how do we get there? And then what keeps you up? And then what makes you really excited about what's to be expected over the next 5 to 10 years for Birmingham? And I'll let you guys choose who goes next to answer that question.
Cornell goes next.
Okay. Well, very. I'll see my guy later about that one. What keeps me up at night is when culture gets in the way of progress. And sometimes that's surfaced or evidenced through the laws that a southern state or even a Midwestern state supports. I think that hurts economic development, and we don't have to go into a political conversation. It's well known in the news what's become somewhat of a hot button in the southern U.S. Around voting laws, around governance of women's bodies. All of those things keep me up at night because the byproduct of those things being instituted is a constraint in the economic world. Companies don't want to be there if they don't feel comfortable being there. And those sorts of things don't create an ecosystem for change. It creates an ecosystem for destruction. That keeps me up at night. Conversely, culture is a learned behavior. And we can truly change culture if we learn behaviors. And I can say Birmingham has been extremely aggressive around learning new behaviors, as evidenced by the youngest mayor has ever been elected in modern history in our state. We are really aggressive around a culture shift and are supporting those new ideas and creating that new narrative and engaging in that storytelling.
Well, what keeps me up at night now is how Cornell is going to pay me back for throwing him first to the question. Other than that, I tend to look at these things through a lens of industry and technology. And I think we're all aware and familiar with how quickly society is changing. And we understand the importance that technology is going to play in that. That's not to suggest that everybody will have to be a programmer or a coder to participate in this new economy, but there's going to have to be some kind of domain knowledge, awareness of technical skills. There's going to have to be much more digital literacy. And so I think we're all familiar with the need and we see what's coming. I don't think as a society that we provided the tools and opportunities that are commensurate with that need. And so I do worry about a lot of people being left behind, a lot of communities being left behind. I worry about this adherence to old paradigms that tend to suggest cities cannot grow unless it is at the expense of other traditionally marginalized and underrepresented and underestimated communities. We see that a lot in our traditional tech hubs, our more mature and established ones. So I am very concerned about that. But I am also encouraged that in Birmingham, and again, you're going to hear us mention our mayor often, but he has just been incredibly dynamic. And that's a function of the team that he has around him, obviously with Cornell, but there are so many other individuals who bring a wealth of expertise and perspectives to the table and to the conversation. And we're going to need that if we figure out some of these challenges, whether that is how to encourage economic activity without triggering displacement, whether it is making sure that kids in schools have access not just to the laptops and to the computers, but to the powerful experiences and to the curricula that they need. How do we make sure educators are not just getting equipment, but that they are also equipped? And so we are doing things here in Birmingham, I think, that other cities are and will be looking to as they ask themselves these same questions. But I've just been incredibly excited, especially as somebody that considers themselves a student of Birmingham's history. I have never been more excited for what I am seeing now. And I cannot think of a time in Birmingham's history since its founding where there was this sense of optimism, this can-do attitude, and we're seeing the benefits, we're seeing the tangible manifestations of that belief right now.
Yeah, Birmingham definitely is on folks' radar, and it is those the ingredients, the secret sauce. You guys are doing it, you're making it happen, and you're taking what you've learned to continue to advance, and I think is so helpful as we think about best practices for other Heartland communities. Both of you mentioned leadership, and that is also something that we've seen over the last couple of years. We've all lived through a powerful reminder of that Heartland communities are leaders. And by the way, anyone can be a leader. Sometimes you don't have to just be that elected official. You can be a leader in your community in so many ways. But from what we've gone through over the past couple of years with the pandemic, Heartland communities are full of programmatic, resilient problem solvers. So Cornell, what's an example of a time Birmingham utilized its resources to solve problems and make true key investments? I know you've touched on some of this, but maybe if you have one example to share.
I'll actually borrow from Deon, because I think, as he's mentioned, it will be the perfect case study about what has spurred the transformative efforts here in our community, and that being Railroad Park. As he's mentioned, in 2010, I think it started with about a $75,000 investment in an area that, for all intents and purposes, was mowed and was pretty much no participation, no walkability, no. It was just purely gray land, if you will, and that investment in ourselves, and I say that because what Birmingham stopped doing was trying to be Atlanta. It stopped trying to be Nashville. It stopped trying to be other communities and started trying to be the best version of itself and invested in itself to do those things. And the byproduct of that investment, that problem that we sought to solve as a community, has been hundreds of millions of dollars in private investment. There are entire communities that are surrounding this new economic asset. And it's truly, again, now what we would call the living room of Birmingham. It's the best representation. As you come into a new home, you get to see this living room, and it's welcoming, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and you see the potentiality for future growth around that area as well.
The living room of Birmingham. That's perfect. Deon, you mentioned preparing for the 21st century, being in the 21st century, digital skills. We know we have communities in Alabama across the Heartland that don't have access, right, to devices, to the internet. That needs to change. We're obviously seeing record numbers of dollars around infrastructure in that way, but how's Birmingham adapting for the 21st century when it comes to that training, attracting, and retaining talent?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, I love what Cornell just said. We're not focused on being Atlanta or Nashville, but the best Birmingham. That might not necessarily resonate at first, but I think it's important because the way that a community views itself, talks about itself, and talks about itself to others is vital, it's critical. And in a lot of ways, it's really the vision. And I believe we all have a collective vision of Birmingham that pulls on the strengths of what happened in the 60s. Far too often, I think we talk about that and position it as through the lens of victimization and not necessarily victory. And looking at that as a point of pride in that what happened in Birmingham, led by ordinary people, changed the nation and it changed the world. And so I think we can draw on that strength and apply it to the future, right? So we have to figure out, well, what is it that we can do with the limited time and capacity and resources that we have to make a tremendous impact? And so selfishly, I have to go to the Ed Farm project that you mentioned earlier in concert with Apple, because that is one of the few examples that I can point to, concrete examples where we have been able to actually work lockstep, hand in hand with a school system to get devices, to get curriculum, to get electives, to make sure that teachers have professional learning experiences. The monumental task of doing something like that cannot be understated, and it is a life privilege of mine to have been a participant in that, but it does not happen without strong leadership. Mayor Randall Whitman. We also had at the time the superintendent, Dr. Lisa Herron, who's now superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools. It doesn't happen without her. It doesn't happen without industry. Our friends over at Alabama Power were crucial to that. I could go on and on and on. And so what I think we've been able to do is really capture a moment in time and just swing for the fences and figure out how do we harness that collective strength to do something that will outlive all of us, hopefully. And so that is just one example of what we've been doing just to make sure that Birmingham continues to move forward in the way that it should, in a way that makes sure everybody has as much access and resources as possible to thrive.
Networks and relationships are so important, and a lot of things you guys have shared talk about sort of like, how do you build that pipeline? How do you bring the right people to the table to actually not think about problem solving, but actually take action and fix the problem or lift the community forward? So would love to hear, what do each of you think sustains these networks and relationships in Birmingham, and how will you shape the future in this way? And I would love, again, we're listening and you're giving advice to other communities across the Heartland, and think about maybe, when there was a time that you were struggling to keep those relationships and networks together, and what did you guys do to make that happen?
I'll jump in. I'll volunteer myself on this one. It's because, as a new person returning to the community, I've been very intentional around, understanding the relationship dynamic in Birmingham. It's a very different place from when I left it as a child. And so, I think foundationally, the breaking down of silos is always going to be something that needs to be at the forefront of your mind, and ensuring that, communication and collaboration takes place. And also, and this may make some people uncomfortable in that, consensus is not necessarily the goal. I think buy-in is what we seek. Consensus, in my view, only allows everyone to get a piece of what they are or what they want. And that typically compromises the overarching mission because everybody's grasping for something. But if we're all bought into the common goal of transformation, of impact in our areas, then we're all willing to do what's necessary, and then silos don't exist. And so I think it's important, again, it starts at the top, to have leadership that you believe in, a mission that people can rally behind, and the end goal, the real intentionality around ensuring that the mission is most important over self.
A couple of things that come to mind is how comfortable with failure, or we'll call them false starts, perhaps, a community has to be. Again, I can think about numerous studies and initiatives, proposals, plans, projects, permits that have been issued and given out and attempted in the name of progress and moving this area forward. And a lot of those are not around, but many of them are. And for whatever it is, I think it just kind of really going back to the city's history as DNA, right? And other cities have to ask themselves this question as well. But the word that I always go to is resilience for Birmingham. Shortly after its founding, it was almost wiped out off the map by a cholera epidemic 2 years later. Then, of course, we had the Great Depression, right? There are quotes about how Birmingham was the hardest hit city. And then, of course, we see the shrinking of industry through globalization and innovation. And yet, throughout all of those epics, Birmingham reinvented itself, right? We transformed ourselves into a community built around technology and innovation, research, healthcare, finance, banking, insurance, construction. It's just, we talked earlier about what surprises people. People are surprised about that. People are surprised that we don't look like a lot of our Rust Belt peers. We actually grew to a metropolitan area of 1.2 million, 1.5 in the CSA, right? And so the fact that we have been able to do all of those things, again, after the Civil War, right, founded in 1871, it is just a remarkable testament to the strength and the resiliency of the people here. Whatever it is, that's what we have. And so investing in those people, right, obviously you're going to get great returns on that. And so I think also part of it, however, is luck. And every city will have those moments of opportunity, right? As I'm sure we're familiar with it. You know, the more prepared I am, the luckier I tend to be, right? And so Birmingham has been preparing for a long time, and when those opportunities came across, now we were in positions to take advantage of them. We have been trying to do initiatives like Railroad Park for ages, for decades, literally. But when the right group of people came along, when the time was right, we were able to move that thing forward. And I'd say I still have pronoun problems. I served on the board for a number of years at Railroad Park. You look at initiatives such as Shift. Again, a lot of people don't realize that is headquartered here. One of the biggest tech success stories of the past 5 years was born right here in Birmingham. Another one, Therapy Brands. Landing is moving its headquarters from San Francisco to Birmingham, founded by the person who started Shift. So we have now success at our backs. All right, success begets success. And so we tried, if I could say succinctly, we tried, we were comfortable with failure, and we kept investing in people. And when that opportunity met that preparation, we were able to do things that have led to the transformation we're witnessing now.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Thank you, brother. I copied your notes.
I'm hearing themes: transformation, impact, resiliency, communication, and leadership. I think those are true things that include the secret sauce of Birmingham. I am now excited and can't wait to hear more about where you're going and where you're headed. And I think everyone listening today, if you haven't been to Birmingham, make sure you get that on your list of places to be in 2022. I hate to say this because this has been such a great discussion, and you guys are both great leaders. I appreciate you taking the time and participating in the work at Heartland Forward and sharing your story. Is there any last one or two things that you both would like to leave our Heartland network with?
Simply, invest in yourself and truly don't be in competition with your neighbors. Be the best version of yourself. And that only can be achieved by truly, having an inventory of who you are and knowing who you are and who you want to be. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we began to see tremendous change when we stopped trying to compete with other communities and really focused on being the best version of Birmingham. And so that's what I would lead. Be the best version of whatever community you are, and truly be engaged in that work.
I really don't think that there's anything I could add to that. I just echo what Cornell said. You have to invest in communities, and communities are composed of people, and so you have to invest in people. And I will end on a selfish note. If you have not visited Birmingham, come and see what kind of secret sauce we have been cooking up. And if you've been to Birmingham, come back and see what we've been cooking up.
Absolutely. So again, thank you both. At Heartland Forward, our mission, as I mentioned, is to kickstart economic growth and help change the narrative about the middle of the country. I'm thrilled today that we were able to talk about Birmingham's secret sauce throughout our network. Investment in building strong communities is going to take all of us working together within our community, across our states, and across our region. So thank you so much. Look forward to being in touch. I can't wait to get on the phone with you and talk about other exciting things happening in Birmingham. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.